Welcome everyone to episode 23 of The World's Don't Keep. For this show's lineup, we have more lore, more Diablo 2 Act 3 discussion, and lots of news to cover. Well, sort of. There'll be no interview question this week or community feedback. For this show, we have quite a bit of stuff to get through in this episode, so we're going to try and focus on that. I am Joe, your podcast host, and with me on the show are the old familiar faces, or voices rather, Jordan, Ken, and Dan. Jordan covers lore, Ken covers news, and Dan covers video. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hello, gentlemen. What's up?
There's everybody.
Ken's asleep.
Yeah, sounds like it.
No way. I don't sleep at all, ever.
Oh, that also sounds like a problem.
He's just depressed because he has to go to work later.
It's true.
On a Saturday. Now, a little side note before we get into some lore. If you're new to our show and listening on YouTube and came here just for the Diablo 3 stuff and want to skip everything else, I'll put a link in the show notes and a timestamp of when you can do so you can skip ahead if you want to. But for everyone else, let's get into some lore. What do we have this week, Jordan?
This week we're continuing on our road down the Black Road, actually. And, let's see. The last part we left off with, Derek had basically lost his last job because, well, the guy he was hired to protect got killed. Cholik had been very busy with the church and all that kind of stuff. And, did we get up to the point of the conjoined twins?
No, we did not.
Okay,
I don't remember any conjoined twins.
I didn't think so. Now, the main thing here is that, as I say, with the church they were performing miracles. They were healing the sick, and essentially doing all of these miraculous things, and one of which was particularly amazing, was taking two conjoined twins and separating them. And while this was going on within the church, it's actually following the perspective of this little girl out in the crowd. And she's having this conversation with this guy, and she looks up and he's, really badly burned, like over much of his upper body, pretty much anything that's visible. And, it's to the point to where you're wondering how the guy's still alive at all.
Right.
And so he and the little girl are talking back and forth, and, he's basically saying, I'm really surprised I got in at all. She's like, wonder what that means. And dude pulls out a crossbow and shoots Cholik in the chest.
Wow.
Yeah, you basically have your first assassination attempt, and it's buried in there pretty deep. His lungs are filling with blood, and he's pretty certain he's screwed at this point. Hasn't got much time. Meanwhile, in the midst of the confusion, the guy actually gets away, and everyone's trying to sort things out. The mercenaries are, of course, in a frenzy trying to do some damage control, and they figure out that the little girl actually was right next to him, and so they take her up so that they can get some information out of her in a little bit.
Right.
And it is kind of interesting because, as I say, Cholik is not doing so hot in that particular moment.
Oh.
And he's taken to this other chamber, and they're caring for him as best they can. And he actually hears Cabraxis' voice in his head. It's like, I'm not going to let you die, but I can't really heal you and keep up the charade at the same time, so you need to get all of them out of the room. So with his last bits of strength, he, coughs up some blood and, yells at them and tells them to get the hell out. It's like, no, you're not going to stay. Get the hell out of my room right now.
So this demon can come and heal me, and you can all keep your faith.
It's like, you know what? This is bigger than you guys. Why don't you get lost? Yeah. So in the midst of this, you actually get a throwback to what's going on with Derek Lang, and Derek had gotten himself into all these drunken stupors everywhere, but he ends up in this town, freezing to death, and most assuredly he was going to die. But this old man actually takes care of him and nurses him back to health. And sometime after that, they were essentially working together in the same place. The old man tells Derek that there's this guy. He's not from the town. This old man would say or would know pretty much anyone in the town since he lived there his whole life.
Right.
And so he tells him that there's this guy at Seeker's Point that essentially knows something about the symbol that Derek kept drawing. And, the symbol, of course, is the sign of Cabraxis. There are these interlocking rings with this line intersecting them all. And apparently this guy is very interested, so the old man acts as a medium so that the two could meet and, essentially exchange information. Jumping back again here, we also go back to Cabraxis and Cholik, who of course goes under a different name now. Oh yeah, this is actually a really intriguing point. There's a plot going on. As I said before, they were actually intending to take West March, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to walk before you can run. You can't just, go and knock the doors down. He doesn't operate like Diablo.
Right.
Now, one of the big shots in Bramwell, which is the place where the church currently is this essentially very cliche feudal lord. And what's interesting is that there's this kind of complex dynamic. The lord essentially has a mistress, and he has a wife. The wife finds out about the mistress and poisons her, and she's pretty much on death row, as it were, because, the apothecaries and everyone that he'd hired couldn't cure her. Seems pretty straightforward, right?
Yep.
But it gets more complicated. If she dies, then the father, who's head of the merchant guild, will get pretty upset about that and demand blood and actually end up hanging the wife if this actually ended up happening.
Brutal.
And then
Dick.
both women would be dead, and he would be implicated, and his good name would be tarnished, and he would essentially lose the favor of the people, which is a bad thing if you're in power.
Right.
And then as you're going through this, and Cabraxis is explaining the dynamics in his plan, later on he actually tells him, and Cholik kind of figures it out to some degree. He's like, wait a minute, this is awfully convenient. And it was something Cabraxis said that really warranted the thought. Is like, it's not his fault. They couldn't help themselves. And he's like, oh, you had something to do with this. Yeah, I see now. It's like, yeah, I kind of did. I also gave the poison to the wife, and that's why no one can cure it.
Ooh.
Sneaky. And she didn't hesitate in the least. She's like, oh, I'm gonna poison that bitch. Homewrecker. Take her down a notch. So yeah. The whole thing, of course, is to get this lord under the fold. Lord Darkulon essentially plays a key role in all this, and he could be the end to Westmarch. So they needed to take him onto the Black Road. And realizing this, Cabraxis, without telling anyone, set this whole thing up piece by piece, this multi-tiered plan of his that could have fallen apart at any stage, but he only tells Cholik what he needs to know for the most part. It's like, hey, this is actually working out. Oh, by the way, guess what I was doing? Now, once all of this is underway, the Lord actually does come to the church, and they set up a private meeting, and he comes with all these guards, and Cholik's like, oh no, you're gonna come by yourself. You don't need any of them. He's like, well, I'd feel much better having my personal guards with me, and I mean, you just almost got assassinated, so I'd figured you'd actually be in favor of this. He's like, oh, no, I'm not worried about it. And there was also another interesting tidbit you learn in the assassination attempt itself. Cholik wondered why he was able to be shot in the first place, right?
Right.
If he was under the protection of Cabraxis to begin
Uh-huh.
with. But while Cabraxis is on the Black Road working his magic, he can't really be in two places at once. So you actually get a very clear understanding of his finite resources. Cabraxis is very powerful, but he's not omnipotent or anything.
Right.
So he still has to more or less be doing one thing at a time. And that's one of the reasons why they hired all the mercenaries on to begin with. He's like, well, I kind of figured that you'd be all right considering we had all those mercenaries. It's like, at one point, Cholik actually exploded on him, and he kind of puts him in his place. He's like, don't think of yourself as my equal. I can still cast you into the fiery darkness. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I forgot what I was talking about. Never mind.
Just watch your mouth, son.
Pretty much.